The evidence you present is not the evidence I want. What happens when two people cannot agree on what constitutes evidence and how they want to resolve their differences? Let's talk about this next. I wanted to make this short video because even though this is something I've brought up in passing, it's a consistent issue when I debate the religious, and I'm sure that for the atheists out there, they see this all the time as well. But I'm also making this for the religious because I think they need to understand why they very rarely ever convert an atheist, because, as I've said in the past, we seem to be two sides separated by a common language. And the problem here is that what the religious mean by evidence and what the non-religious mean by evidence is nowhere remotely even close to being the same thing. Your evidence is not our evidence. And when we ask for evidence, what you're providing isn't it. So let's see if we can work this all out. Now, I know that people hate when I do this. I hate when I do this, but I'm going to go to the dictionary for a definition of the word evidence. When I ask a theist for evidence, I mean the following: the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. So let's look at the specific words being used here. Facts, objectively demonstrable and verifiable facts. Things that can directly show that the claims made by Christianity are objectively correct and existent in the real world. Information. Things that we can examine which are logically consistent and rationally leads to the conclusions that you want us to come to. You cannot tell us to have faith. Faith will never, ever, ever convince a skeptic, and if you think it will, you're wrong. See, this is why it's usually so pointless to debate the religious, because both sides are looking at this from completely different, mutually contradictory perspectives. For the atheists, this is a mental exercise. We want to be shown the direct and demonstrable evidence that leads from point to point and reaches a rationally defensible conclusion. We're only interested in what can be proven objectively. We don't care about what can be suggested philosophically. We're not interested in emotional appeals. We require demonstrable evidence that can be objectively examined, which actually proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the claims of the religious are actually so. Nothing less will do. But from the religious side, this whole thing is an emotional exercise. The religious, and trust me, as an ex-theist, I know this all too well, but the religious didn't come to their conclusions based on rational reasoning or logical evaluation. They did so because either they had it drummed into their heads when they were young and innocent, before they had the means to evaluate the claims intellectually, or because it makes them feel good. None of the arguments that the religious generally present ever convinced them to believe in their gods in the first place, because the arguments that they use aren't evidence. They're rationalizations. They're things that they came up with after the fact to bolster their already existing beliefs. And while this might sound like an insult, it's not intended to be. But I think that it's a defense mechanism. They do view the fact that others don't agree with them, or worse, actively disagree, to be a direct attack upon their person, and they have to fight back. Unfortunately, they really have nothing to fight back with. Again, that's not an insult, that's just the reality. When a theist says that they're going to give you evidence, what they're actually providing is something that gives them comfort over the things they believe. None of these arguments will convince anyone who isn't already convinced, but it will sound like absolute proof to someone who's desperately looking for a reason to feel better about the things that they believe in a world that is increasingly hostile towards it. And that's why you'll notice that you'll get all kinds of apologists who wander this wasteland trying to inspire the already religious to keep believing, instead of actually debating the non-religious and trying to present objectively verifiable evidence that will convert the heathens. You don't see scientists having lectures trying to convince people that science is true, because they don't have to. Science is demonstrable. Religion is not. Science is intellectual. Religion is emotional. There's very little comparison between the two. And that's really where the disconnect comes in. When an atheist says, "Show me your evidence," they're not asking for ad hoc rationalizations meant to provide emotional comfort that the things that you already believe are so. They don't care about your emotional comfort. They don't care about your rationalizations. They care about actual, objectively verifiable evidence that the things that you believe, the things that you are claiming are factually correct in the real world, actually are. And if you can't present that, and unfortunately for the religious, they simply can't, then they have no reason to take your claim seriously. And you'd think that the religious would be able to step back and ask why they have no evidence. But they don't. And I'll be doing another video in the future on the failure of faith and why it really doesn't impress anyone. Because honestly, as I said earlier, we're speaking two entirely different languages and we're seeking two entirely different outcomes. The religious want emotional comfort. They want to feel good about the world and their place in it. They want to feel like they're being watched over and protected, and that the guilty are all going to be punished in some eternal hell if they happen to get away with their crimes here. It's all about feelings, not at all about facts. Facts tend to be inconvenient and are openly ignored when they get in the way of their comfort. On the other hand, atheists, or more properly the skeptics, only care about truth. They don't care how they feel. They care if the things that they allow into their heads are factually correct. They continually test the world and replace bad ideas with good ones, provisionally, until even better ones come along. How this makes them feel is completely irrelevant. They have what I describe as a realistic view of justice. They don't need an external force holding their hand. They tend to be independent and free-willed and, honestly, stronger people than the religious, at least in my opinion. Certainly, they're not perfect, but in general terms, I'd say that people who get off their knees and get on their feet and actually do something to solve problems are generally preferable to people who don't. Your mileage can, as they say, vary. So, honestly, I have to say that most debates between the religious and the non-religious are a total waste of time because they never come to any conclusions. The two sides are not even trying to get to the same place. The religious want comfort. They want to feel good about the world. They want to feel like they're being protected. If they have to believe totally unsupported nonsense to do so, they will without even batting an eye. The non-religious want facts. Hard, cold, unemotional facts. They care if what they believe is true, where the religious simply do not. How you bridge the gap between the two sides, I have no idea. I don't even know if it's possible. There seems to be a fundamental disconnect between the two sides that I can't see resolving, and every single debate ends in the same kind of empty stalemate, with one side or the other just giving up because the other side just won't listen to what they have to say. Even though I still engage in a lot of debates, every single solitary one ends in disaster. And I don't think this is ever going to change. So long as the two sides can't come to a common understanding of what evidence is and a common goal, then the whole enterprise is doomed to fail. You can lay the blame for that wherever you like, but regardless, it remains two sides separated by a common language with absolutely no hope in sight.